baptism.
Yeah, good question.
I quote, I noticed quite a few people who switch from churches with infant baptism to believer's baptism, and it's not even the reason they leave. I know you and Gary came from that. Was that a consideration at all? My friend just switched to your church from a pedo church, and it wasn't because of that at all. I haven't had a chance to talk to him if it was a big deal for him yet or not. Seems like people will switch at the drop of a hat.
Oh, I love it. I love the drop of the hat comment. That's not a fair comment.
No, that's right. I can just share why I switched. So me and Nicole were separated. They were just dealing with a lot of different things, and Nicole was like, "I'm not going back anymore. I'm pretending that everything's fine because I'm like, you just dress all nice, go there. I'm done with that." I felt like I wanted to stay. When I was 21 and first got saved, I read a book called "Call to Stay" by Caleb Brecky, and it really pushed like, if there's problems in your church, what are you doing about it? And so I was part of starting guys prayer groups and guys groups for young guys, the prison ministry, Mexican ministry, full pull and everything. Fell hard on my face. But I still kind of felt like I should stay. But there was a couple that we knew from Desiring God that said, "Hey, go to a church for a while. That's going to be better for your marriage. That I can walk alongside you." I guess there wasn't a lot of support where we were at. And so I was
Is that fair that there wasn't a lot of support where you at, or was it more just the fact that you weren't really being that honest about how you were doing?
No, I was being honest, but no, there wasn't that much support. No. There's support. Like we had support, like for example, when our daughter died, we had meals for 3 months. Unbelievable support. It's like people don't know how to think. You need to be educated on how to respond to these things as well, right? There's a lot of things going on. Anyways, so we switched for that reason for 6 months, and then we were going to go back. Okay. Again, that was our plan.
And sorry, did you come to our church or did you go?
Yeah, I went to
Central.
I went to Central, and I went to the Promontory campus because it was chairs in the gym. And I love the idea of being as far away from formalism as possible.
Yeah, I can see that. I can identify that.
And so I really like that. I like Pastor Jonathan Newfield's preaching.
Very good preacher.
But one thing I massively noticed after I left was like, I didn't need to be in church to minister to other people. I needed to be in church to be ministered to. Like I needed help. Okay. And I had always kind of thought of it as like, I need to help others now. I need to help others now because I'm a Christian now and I have to help everyone else. And I didn't realize I needed to be discipled and I needed to be taught. And there was like, I need to humble myself. And so that's why we stayed. And so that the baptism thing, I was never really convicted on at all.
Either way.
Yeah. I understood adult baptism more because I'm like, if you actually believe, then you could do it. Like it just made more sense, like just from the limited knowledge I have. But my dad used to tell me before I went out and he knew I'd go out and party and stuff like that. He's like, "Kyle, remember you have a baptized forehead." I'm like, what does that mean? Like, it doesn't help me get into heaven anymore and stuff like that. So I had no conviction of it at all. And so that makes it really easy to switch. I know some Dutch Reformed churches where baptism is wildly important and it is a big deal when someone becomes a Baptist. Like,
sorry, are you saying it's not where you come from?
No,
not as big of a deal. No. Okay.
Well, it depends who you talk to. But I know that like there's Dutch Reformed churches where, or Reformed churches where like it's really you're almost basically you're saved when you get baptized. It's assumed you're saved.
They would never admit that, but that is practically how they act.
Exactly. Yeah. And from what I understand there, it's a way bigger deal to go to a Baptist church.
It really is.
So I think the issue is people will be able to switch quickly on something when there isn't a deep conviction of it, a deep belief. That's why it's easy to switch.
I wouldn't even say that. I would say that people, that might be part of it, but I think it's really unfair to say, hey, people stay there. Like anytime that you might lose literally friends or family because you're going to make a change, you can hardly say that people are where they're at because they feel convicted about it, right? You can't say, oh, wow, they they really love their church. They love the Lord. They love everything they believe there. If you were going to literally lose family trust and respect because you're making a change on a Sunday where you worship, wowzers.
Yeah, that's crazy stuff.
You know what I mean? And it's very common. It's very common. And it's not just
way easier to stay.
Come from
way easier to stay.
Way easier to stay, and so I have a lot of grace for people that do stay. I also think it's important to stay at churches.
Yeah, healthy churches. I know someone that
all churches are unhealthy, Kyle.
Are not leaving their church, even though they don't believe in the Bible and they don't believe in anything that's taught, like nothing, like basically an atheist, but they're not leaving because it will cause too many problems. So they go to church every Sunday.
That would be very common.
That's crazy.
That's very common.
Yeah. That means that that's religion.
Yeah. Yeah. That is the epitome of religion.
Yeah.
People don't, it's back to the end comment was people don't leave flippantly. I mean, I have a lot of experience with this because I have met as a leader with a lot of people that are wanting to become members of our church, and you do not become a member of our church unless you're baptized as a believer. People struggle with it. They would come from the angle of, hey, I've done profession of faith. I would say, yes, you professed your faith. You should have been baptized when you professed your faith. That's, that would be my angle. I also think,
well, it's fear monger too, that if you get baptized again, that's like one of the most heathen things.
Yeah. And most people, if you read the Bible, you would say that you weren't baptized. Right. And I think the idea of, I don't think Jesus was baptized as a baby, right? Like he was. So I just struggle with the whole connection. Yeah. I struggle with the defense. It's really hard to read it objectively if you have been indoctrinated your entire life. And I know indoctrinated has negative connotation. I didn't mean it that way. I meant if you have been taught something, it does not matter how wrong it is. It's very hard to literally start thinking differently. And then there's the other piece with the baptism where people, first of all, it's not a salvation issue. So then people will instantly, it's a total secondary issue. So we can be great friends and have great theological discussions and love and hang out and even go to church together. In our church, there's people that land in both camps. Yeah. And I think that's how it should be. Yeah. I can see.
Yeah, there's nothing I see.
I don't think practically you can have a church that believes both, which there are those churches. I have friends that go to a church like that right now, and I actually been meaning to ask them kind of how it's working because I love the idea of it, but I just don't think as church leaders you can teach something and then say, oh, by the way, it's enough of an important issue where hey, we're going to probably have a separate church over it, but I don't think that should keep us from standing alongside brothers and sisters that would.
Well, you need to connect on the gospel first, your love for Christ. Because if that's not there, then don't even talk to me about baptism.
No, and that is really the rub I have. So it's like here we have a bunch of unsaved people being hyper focused on that. Now there again, it's because of, it's partially just because of the tradition and the things that it's steeped in. And I find it interesting because it's Reformed churches that are doing this. And they come from the Reformation, which was a breakaway from all of and they have great judgment at times, some denominations, some less obviously, but a lot of it is like this judgment of Catholicism. Like, in a lot of ways it practically is just like, do you see what you're doing? Do you see the irony of the ceremony and the baby? And like, do you see the irony, right? But you don't because you're in it and it's important and you have to do it. If you don't do it, you're shamed. Yeah. So the minute you're shamed, right, because you don't do because you don't do something, like, all of a sudden now you're starting to have a lot of people do things for the wrong reasons. And that to me is concerning. Yeah. So even in our church, it becomes a bit of an issue where it's like, hey, you have somebody who's 30, 40, 50 years old. They come to our church. Some of them are, they're obviously, most of them are probably professing Christians. And they have baggage, let's say, from what they were taught. And the idea of them being, let's use the word rebaptized. They don't even like that term, but baptized as a believer, they would consider it insulting to their family. Yeah. Right? Like it's hurtful to their family. They would say, hey, I've professed, I believe. Do I really need to go through this ceremony and be baptized? And in our church we do. And it's challenging because you have a lot of amazing people that are not on the fringes or even serving. They're discipling other people. They're trying to follow the Lord, but it's just this rub of like, hey, it's amazing how their family stuff ties into how we live, right? And I think ultimately, and you would agree with this, I think, and you've probably done it, we need to respectfully, very respectfully say, hey, this is a thing of conviction for me. And if somebody is reading the Bible, they should be able to be, basically, hey, they should be able to respect that. And if you're doing it humbly with respect, you should be able to think differently on an issue like this. Yeah. It's not a salvation issue. I don't know anybody that would say it's a salvation issue.
No, so, but like Central was Paedo Baptist, and I would have switched. I still would have gone to Central. Like there were so many other things that I went for and stayed for than it was the baptism thing.
Well, and that's what I find kind of humorous about our church. I guess that's where I was going when they specifically used our church as an example. There's just a lot of people that show up there that are really struggling with the baptism thing. They definitely are not fully convinced that they should be getting rebaptized. Yeah. But of course, the teaching, we're preaching the gospel.
Change is hard.
Yeah, change is hard.
So certain things, are pushed really, really hard. What about you? When you switched from a Paedo Baptist church, Infant Baptist church, to an adult Baptist church, was that a thing at all that you thought about, or?
No, but I had so many other things. It's a long conversation. But I was so broken. I was living in sin in so many areas. And I think that's where, even for me today, I have to remember the journey and how gracious God's been. And I think we don't do that because we're always looking at the exterior and people are always presenting way better than their heart is. So then it's just so easy to judge. But
It is. Yeah.
So that was not my concern, although it quickly became a thing because it was expected to be baptized there. And so I very graciously say to people, if I had to go get baptized now in my 40s, it would be a lot more difficult than it was in my 20s when I was more of a weather vane, probably. A little more stuff.
More than you are now? That's incredible.
Oh, ouch.
Sorry, Gary.
Ouch.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed that episode and were blessed by it, would you be willing to support the show? That would help a lot in creating more content, improving the quality of the content, putting the production value, getting more guests on, and me being able to spend more time and energy towards it. So if you're interested in doing that, you can click up here and it'll take you to a support page. But you can also subscribe to the podcast by clicking over here and doing that. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you on the next one.